Hello, Shemai. I'm Isabel. Croeso and welcome to my wild Welsh garden. Well, it's August bank holiday weekend and it's the end of summer. So in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the kind of jobs that I'm doing at the end of the summer. In a conventional garden, what you're trying to do at this time of year is to kind of keep your garden looking nice, trying to keep the flowers going and trying to keep the foliage nice until the end of October, really, until the first frosts start. And so for all of my gardening life, that's what I would have been doing at this time of year, at the end of August. I'd be deadheading furiously and cutting back the foliage of plants that were looking a bit tired and keeping everything sort of neat and tidy. But of course, now I'm a wild gardener. Things aren't quite as simple as that. But now I'm gardening primarily for wildlife. I do want my garden to look nice, but I want it to provide homes and food and habitat for creatures. So the question has to be, when I'm thinking about sort of tidying up my borders and cutting foliage back, not what will it look like, but what will be best for wildlife. I want to keep the flowers going for as long as possible because I want to have food for pollinators. This is the time of year that traditionally you cut back lavender because the flowers are over and it's looking rather tired and grey. But I can see at least 3 little bumblebees on this lavender here. So I really don't think I'm going to do it yet. The idea of cutting it back in August is it gives it time to regrow a little bit before the cold winter, and so it's less susceptible to frost. Because if you cut it back later, nearer to winter, then the new growth is very vulnerable to frost and you could lose it. So it's a dilemma, isn't it? Because I don't want to deprive these bees of food when, you know, a lot of flowers have gone over. But I don't want to lose the lavender in the winter. Difficult. And my lanky lavender here, the side of the breakfast room, has butterflies and bees. So I really don't want to cut that back yet either. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bumblebees on that lavender. This lavender along the edge of the orchard is pretty well over, but it's all mixed up with this wild marjoram. And I don't want to disturb that because that's still being visited by bees and various pollinators. So it looks like that's another job I'm not going to be doing. At this time of year, we're advised to cut back our hardy geraniums. This is because they're beginning to look quite tired if they're not over completely. This is Geranium Rosanne, and she's outside the greenhouse next to the pond, and she's featured in a lot of my videos. But she's beginning to look quite tired and over. There's far fewer flowers than there were, and they're all looking a little bit sad, but they're still being visited by an awful lot of pollinators. That's what I did to this geranium. It's a pink one, which self-seeded into a crack in the concrete just outside my back door. And it was lovely when it was flowering, but then it went over and there were very few flowers and it was flopping and, just looking very untidy. And I cut it right back to the concrete and it's grown again with this nice, neat little sort of mound of foliage. Whether I'll get any flowers, I don't know. But that's the sort of conventional way of dealing with hardy geraniums. And I did something very similar to this pink geranium here. It's a different type of geranium. But it was very long and floppy and it had flopped right over the path and I couldn't get up the path, so I cut it right back. And it's produced all this new foliage, looking very nice and fresh. And this is the same geranium on the other side of the trellis. And it does look quite untidy. And I think I like this whole dying down, sinking, fading thing that goes on when plants go over. I think there's a beauty in that, even more than there is in a nice mound of new fresh foliage. So back to our friend Rosanne here. Well, last year I didn't cut it back at all, and it did something rather similar to the pink geranium I was just showing you. The old foliage sort of gradually faded away, kept flowering, and there was some nice new foliage in the centre. So because there are still flowers on this, because they're still being visited by pollinators, and I don't want to deprive the pollinators of their dinner, I'm going to leave that one. But there was also a huge Rosanne at the top of the steps up to the garden here. And last week I cut it right down and it started to grow new foliage from the centre. So I'm going to compare the two. I'm going to see which one I think is best in terms of flowers, but also in terms of habitat for wildlife overall. And then maybe I'll decide what to do with all my other hardy geraniums. And there are several hardy geraniums in this border outside my back door, which I haven't cut back. And it does look very messy. But there were a couple of bullfinches that visited the garden a couple of weeks ago, and they spent a long time in this bed. And I'm pretty sure they were eating the seed heads of the hardy geraniums. So this video is turning out to be more jobs that I'm not doing at this time of year rather than jobs that I'm doing. One of the things that we're encouraged to do is to deadhead our plants to keep them flowering. And I don't actually have so many plants to deadhead really. I normally have cosmos, but the slugs ate every one. I must have planted over a dozen and there's none appeared at all. But I have been deadheading this buddleia to keep her going. It is the law of diminishing returns. The flowers get fewer and smaller, but it has been visited by a peacock butterfly recently and a white one there, and it's still visited regularly by bees. Another thing that you can do to keep your borders looking nice is to deadhead your roses. Well, this is a little climbing rose, which is climbing up an old gate just at the back of the cottage here. And this I have deadheaded. Look at all the buds there are to come. This rose I haven't deadheaded because it's got such amazing hips. This is tottering by gently, but it still produced more flowers and there's still some buds to come. This rambling rose at the right of the rose arch I haven't deadheaded, and it's still flowering, and there's still buds to come. And the rose on the left of the arch I haven't deadheaded because, again, of the enormous hips that it's produced. I didn't deadhead it last year and it did produce more flowers. It hasn't done this year. So it's another of these dilemmas being a wild gardener, whether you should deadhead or not deadhead. And I think you have to get to know each plant separately and decide what's best for it and for you. Being a conventional gardener, it's easy, you just follow the rules. But in wild gardening, there are no rules really. So yeah, I think you have to decide what's best for you and decide what's best for your plant. And I'm still doing that because this is only coming to the end of my first year of being a wild gardener. And yes, I haven't decided really either what's best for me, what's best for the individual plant, or what's best for wildlife, because that's the thing that I'm thinking about most. What is best for wildlife? I'm also doing a bit of seed collecting, and here through the arch that goes through to the veg patches by the stepping logs, there's a hedge garlic, and it's produced some seed pods. And this is the larval food plant of the orange tip butterfly, so I'll be quite happy to have more of this in my garden. So I'm going to take that. This is what it's looking like at the front of my house, with all the Eryngium flowering still, looking lovely. And then I had 3 mullein plants that germinated here. I don't know where they'd come from, and they've all been broken off. That one was broken off a while ago, but it's produced some more flowers from lateral shoots. And these I just left really as an affront to whoever had broken them off, that they would feel shamed next time they walked past. And I didn't think they would come to anything, but when I've investigated them, there are actually they have actually produced seeds, little tiny black things. So I'm going to collect some of those. Just at the side of the new pond here, and on the edge of the grassy area, there's quite a few wildflowers that I could potentially collect seed from. Here's Ragged Robin. Now, I collected seed from this a few weeks ago. The seed heads are still there, the little pots of seeds, but I think they're pretty well empty now. But I'm hoping that it's self-seeded down there, and I shall get some seedlings in the spring. There's a seedling there of an evening primrose. This is a wild mallow, and there's several seed heads there which have got seeds in. And then a little bit further up, these are the seed heads of feverfew. And there's, oh yes, lots of seeds in there. Scatter those. And then red poppy here, which went over a while ago. But there's plenty of seed heads. With plenty of seeds. This is the sneezewort, which has been really fabulous, but the seed heads aren't ready yet. And there's some other seed heads that I was wanting to find, which are the oxeye daisies, and there were several over there, so I'm going to go and have a rummage and see if I can find any seed heads. But it was a while since they went over, so I might just have missed this sort of window of opportunity really for collecting them. The other seeds that I wanted to collect were from the wild carrot. I planted so many of these little plants, and only 2 have survived, one in the bed and this one that was in a pot. It's been fabulous for pollinators, and it's produced a lovely seed head, but the seeds aren't ready yet. So although it's been a really difficult year for growing them, I'm not going to give up, because you never know, next year might be dry and not so good for slugs, and maybe they'll find it easier to survive them. So yeah, I'm not going to give up, and I'll try and remember to come out and collect these seeds in, I don't know, maybe a week or so. These are the ragged robin seeds and the red campion seeds that I collected and sowed a while ago. Yeah, slightly oversowed, I think. And then I pricked some of the bigger ones out a couple of weeks ago. Those are the ragged robins, and these are the red campions. These are the little plants of the cuckoo flower, or lady smock, that I grew from basil leaf cuttings earlier in the year. There's a few of them. They've done really well. Yeah, so I was just out here checking, you know, as you do, and I noticed, well, that one's been eaten, and that's been eaten a little bit, and that one's been eaten, and that one's been eaten a little bit, and I thought, those wretched slugs got all the way up on this table. And then I noticed this, look. There's a green caterpillar, and there's one hiding under there as well. Yeah, so, I mean, what can I say? I can't really complain, can I? I'm growing these plants for larval food plants of my local insect, so I really can't complain if an insect comes along and lays their eggs on them and eats them all. I'm just hoping that they'll recover and provide more larval food plants for next year. Thanks for joining me again in my wild Welsh garden. Thanks for watching the video and seeing the jobs that I'm doing, or maybe not doing, at this time of year. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Hwyl fawr!